All right, so are you ready to dive into Genius Foods with Max Lugavere?
Absolutely. I'm excited to unpack this one.
Yeah, this deep dive, it's kind of like a brain health upgrade manual.
No.
Exploring how everyday choices can actually boost our brain power.
Yeah. You know what I find really interesting is how Lugaver's whole approach comes from such a personal place.
Hmm.
His mom struggles with cognitive decline and like traditional medicine, not having the answers. It really pushed him, you know.
Yeah, pushed him to explore new territory, right? Like he took that frustration and turned it into a mission to figure out how to protect our brains.
Exactly. And that's where things get really cool. He goes beyond the basics like, neurons firing.
Yeah.
He looks at the cell membrane and how it's like how fluid it is affects brain cell communication.
Okay, wait, so the cell walls in our brains are affected by what we eat.
It's like this, imagine omega-3 and omega-6 fats
Mm.
are like two teams, competing on a soccer field, and that field is your cell membrane. The team that wins controls how smoothly messages travel between brain cells.
So like a good omega-3 game plan is key.
Exactly. And guess what, DHA? That's the stuff in fatty fish. It's like having a star player on the omega-3 team.
So that salmon we had for dinner is like a brain cell high five.
Totally. And this is where the modern diet comes in. Lugavere says, the way we eat today, it's messing with our brain power. Our brains evolved on a totally different diet, back in the hunter-gatherer days.
They weren't exactly hitting up the drive-through.
Right. And this shift to an agrarian lifestyle and then to our industrialized diet has actually led to like smaller brains over time.
So we're basically feeding our brains junk food.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
And one of the worst offenders is sugar. All that excess sugar spikes our blood sugar levels. It's like a roller coaster.
Yeah, we all know that sugar crash feeling, but how does that affect our brains long term?
Think of it like chronically high insulin levels are hitting fast forward on aging for your body and your brain.
Okay, so that brings us to this biochemical liposuction thing.
Right. So by reducing insulin levels through diet, we can unlock our body's ability to burn stored fat for energy.
So hacking our metabolism while giving our brains a boost.
Yeah. And one way to do this is a low carbohydrate diet. It's like mimicking a fasting state.
Interesting, but what about all the warnings about cholesterol? Doesn't a low-carb, higher-fat diet raise cholesterol?
That's where Lugavere flips the script. He debunks the myth that dietary cholesterol is the bad guy.
So all those years of avoiding eggs and butter.
Yeah, he says cholesterol is actually crucial for the brain and overall health.
So we need to rethink our relationship with fat and cholesterol.
Absolutely. Embrace healthy fats like avocados, olive oil, nuts.
This is like permission to enjoy those creamy, delicious foods again.
In a smart way, of course.
Yeah.
Now, another thing Lugavere challenges is the gut-brain connection. He calls the gut microbiome our forgotten organ.
We hear a lot about the gut microbiome these days, but how does it actually affect our brains?
Think of your gut like a city of trillions of bacteria, and they're talking to your brain.
Okay, so our gut is like directly connected to our brain.
Yeah. And Lugavere says our modern lifestyle, all the hand sanitizer and processed foods might be messing with the diversity of our gut bacteria.
So disrupting that balance in our gut can actually affect our brain health.
That's the idea. And what's interesting is he links this to the rise in brain diseases. Countries with more hygiene actually have higher rates of Alzheimer's.
Wow, so maybe I need to ease up on the hand sanitizer.
Yeah.
So if our modern lifestyle is harming our gut, what can we do to fix it?
Well, Lugavere suggests eating lots of fiber, especially the prebiotic kind, from veggies, fruits, and legumes.
So feeding the good bacteria.
Exactly. Fermented foods like kimchi and sauerkraut are great too.
So it's about giving our gut a diverse ecosystem.
And avoiding unnecessary antibiotics, those can really disrupt the balance.
It's like being mindful of what we put in our bodies and how it affects the tiny residents in our gut.
Right. And even simple things like getting a pet can increase microbial diversity.
So our furry friends can actually help our brains.
In a way, yeah. Now, another thing Lugavere's passionate about is sleep. He calls it sacred, and for good reason.
Yeah, we talked about how it's like a brain detox, but why is it so important?
It's crucial for brain health hormone regulation, even weight management. During sleep, our brains are doing all sorts of maintenance and repair.
So like a nightly tune-up for the brain.
Yeah, and one of the key players is the glymphatic system, which removes waste products during sleep.
And if we don't sleep enough...
Then that cleaning crew can't do its job.
Yeah.
Even one night of bad sleep can hurt your brain.
Okay, that's a little scary. So how do we make sure our brain's cleaning crew is working properly?
Well, consistency is key. Sticking to a regular sleep schedule, even on weekends.
So no more late-night Netflix binges.
They're okay sometimes. But yeah, a consistent sleep schedule is best. also reducing blue light exposure in the evenings.
So put down the phone and pick up a book before bed.
Exactly. And dim the lights too, create a relaxing bedtime routine.
What about all those sleep trackers? Are those helpful?
They can be, but don't get obsessed with the numbers. It can cause more anxiety.
So use them as a tool, but don't let them rule your life.
Right. And speaking of tools, remember those hormones we talked about? They also play a role in sleep.
Right. Growth hormone from fasting, leptin from those strategic cheat days.
And cortisol, the stress hormone. When it's too high, it can disrupt sleep.
So managing stress is important for sleep too.
Exactly. And that brings us to acute versus chronic stress.
We talked about how exercise is a form of acute stress that can actually benefit the brain, but how do we know when stress is good or bad?
Well, acute stress, like exercise, is short-lived and helps us adapt. Chronic stress is like constantly running on a treadmill. It wears us down.
So it's like a quick sprint versus a marathon.
Right, chronic stress can be really damaging to the brain, from inflammation to hormone imbalances.
So managing stress isn't just about feeling calmer, it's about protecting our brain.
Exactly. And that leads us to the Genius Foods Plan, Lugavere's roadmap for a healthy brain.
Okay, let's hear it. What's this plan all about?
It starts with cutting out the usual suspects: processed foods, refined grains, sugar, those inflammatory seed oils.
So basically ditch the junk and eat real food.
Yeah. And then there's strategic carbohydrate reintegration.
Wait, didn't we talk about how sugar is bad?
We did. But Lugavere says after an initial period of low-carb eating, strategically reintroducing carbs a few times a week can be beneficial.
Okay, I'm intrigued. Tell me more about this carbohydrate reintegration.
It's about optimizing hormone function and replenishing energy stores.
Mm-hmm.
Carbs and insulin aren't always bad. They're just misused in our modern diets.
So it's about finding the right balance.
Exactly. This can improve our metabolic flexibility, how our bodies switch between burning carbs and fats.
So we're training our bodies to be more efficient.
That's the idea. And that's a key part of the Genius Foods Plan, working with our bodies, not against them.
I like that. So it's about finding a sustainable way to nourish our brains.
And Lugavere provides meal plans and recipes to make it easier.
Awesome. So he's giving us the tools to create brain-boosting meals. One thing that stood out to me was his emphasis on consistency over everything in moderation.
Yeah, he says moderation can actually lead to a lower quality diet.
How so? I always thought moderation was the key.
Well, when people try to eat everything in moderation, they often end up eating less healthy food and more unhealthy food.
So it's about making conscious choices that prioritize the good stuff.
Exactly. And this strategic carbohydrate reintegration, it helps improve our metabolic flexibility, which is really important for brain health.
So we're training our bodies to be like metabolic ninjas.
I like that analogy.
Yeah.
And that's the beauty of the Genius Foods Plan. It's about understanding our bodies and making choices that support them.
It's empowering. It's like we're taking control of our health.
And that's exactly what Lugavere wants us to do. Challenge assumptions, be skeptical, and keep learning. Because science is always changing, especially when it comes to the brain.
So never stop being curious about our brains.
Exactly. The more we know, the better choices we can make.
All right, so we've covered a lot. The power of Genius Foods, sleep, gut health, stress management. It's a lot to take in.
It is, but remember, it's not about doing everything at once.
Right. Small steps lead to big changes.
And that brings us to those brain-boosting foods. Lugavere dives deep into their benefits.
Okay, I'm ready. Let's open up this Genius Foods treasure chest and see what's inside.
So first up, let's talk about extra virgin olive oil. It's like a superstar in the Mediterranean diet, which is always linked to good brain health.
Okay, I'm all about olive oil. So what makes it so good for our brains?
It's full of these things called polyphenols. They're like antioxidants that can actually get past the blood-brain barrier.
Wait, the blood-brain barrier, isn't that super hard to cross?
Yeah, it's like the brain's VIP area.
Hmm.
But these polyphenols, they have a special pass. One of them, oleocanthal, it actually helps clear out that amyloid plaque from the brain.
So olive oil is like brain gunk remover.
Pretty much. And besides the polyphenols, it's also got those healthy monounsaturated fats. They're really stable, unlike those industrial seed oils Lugavere talks about.
Yeah, he calls those seed oils frankenfats. That's a pretty intense name.
He's not a fan. They're highly processed, and they oxidize easily, which leads to inflammation everywhere, including the brain.
And they're in like everything.
Yeah, it's tough to avoid them completely. So he says, choose extra virgin olive oil whenever you can, especially for cooking.
Got it. Olive oil is definitely going on my shopping list. What else should I be looking for?
Well, if you want a real brain-boosting powerhouse, look no further than wild fatty fish. Those omega-3 fats, BHA and EPA.
Yeah, the ones that help with brain cell communication.
Exactly. And there are some amazing studies showing how good they are for your brain. In one study, adults who took omega-3 supplements, they had a big boost in executive function after like 6 months. The placebo group, their executive function actually got worse.
So omega-3s made them sharper, and the placebo made them duller. That's crazy.
It shows you how powerful those fats are.
Yeah.
And Lugavere says get them from whole foods, like salmon, sardines, anchovies.
So skip the fish oil pills and go for the real deal.
Yeah, remember those eggs we used to avoid because of cholesterol?
Yeah, good riddance to those days.
Well, Lugavere says dietary cholesterol isn't the enemy. In fact, eggs are like a brain food gold mine, especially the yolks.
He calls them nature's multivitamin, right?
Yeah, they're packed with choline, which is super important for brain development and memory.
And they can even improve heart health.
There was this study where people with metabolic syndrome, they ate 3 eggs a day, and their insulin resistance improved, their good cholesterol went up, and even their LDL particles got smaller, which is better for your heart.
Wow, so eggs are back on the menu in a big way. What about meat? Is it good or bad for the brain?
Lugavere's a fan of meat, but he's picky about the type. He says choose grass-fed beef, free-range, poultry pasture-raised pork.
I'm guessing it's because of those omega-3s and omega-6s again.
You got it. Those animals have a way better fat profile than the ones raised conventionally. More omega-3s, less omega-6s, which helps with inflammation.
And inflammation is bad news for the brain.
For sure. Plus, grass-fed beef has lots of iron, zinc, and other minerals that are good for the brain.
So it's not just about avoiding the bad stuff, it's about adding in the good stuff.
Exactly. And that brings us to another brain-boosting champ, broccoli.
Broccoli. Really? I mean, it's healthy, but is it really that good for the brain?
It might surprise you. Broccoli has this compound called sulforaphane, and it does amazing things for brain health.
Okay, I'm listening. What's so special about sulforaphane?
Well, it's a strong antioxidant and anti-inflammatory, and it actually helps your body make enzymes that protect the brain from damage. It can also improve cognitive function and even help grow new brain cells.
Wait, new brain cells. So broccoli is like brain fertilizer.
That's pretty powerful.
Yeah.
And here's a cool trick. If you add a little mustard seed to your cooked broccoli, it helps your body make even more sulforaphane.
Now that's a tip I can use. So we've talked about lots of foods, but it's not just about what we eat. It's also about how our bodies digest those foods, which brings us back to the gut microbiome.
Right, that whole world of bacteria living in our gut. We talked about how our modern lifestyle can mess with that balance and potentially harm our brains. So how do we make sure our gut is happy and healthy?
Well, Lugavere says prebiotic fiber is key. You know, the kind you find in veggies, fruits, and legumes?
It's like food for those good bacteria.
So we're setting the table for our gut bugs.
And fermented foods, like kimchi, sauerkraut, kombucha, they bring in those good bacteria directly.
So it's like feeding them and giving them reinforcement.
Exactly. And it's important to avoid unnecessary antibiotics. Those can wipe out all the bacteria, good and bad.
And remember, getting a pet can help too. More diversity in the gut.
It's all about creating a strong gut ecosystem, which helps with overall health, including brain health.
It's amazing how connected everything is. What we eat, how we sleep our gut, it all affects our brains.
And that brings us to another crucial piece of the puzzle, sleep.
We talked about how it's like a nightly brain detox where the glymphatic system cleans things up. But what are some tips for actually getting better sleep?
Well, Lugavere is big on consistency, going to bed and waking up around the same time every day, even on weekends.
So no more sleeping until noon.
It's okay sometimes, but yeah, a regular sleep schedule is really helpful. And try to reduce blue light exposure in the evening.
So put away the phone and relax before bed.
Exactly. Dim the lights, take a bath, read a book.
And what about those sleep trackers? Are they worth it?
They can be, but don't get too focused on the numbers. It can actually make it harder to sleep.
So use them as a tool, not a source of stress.
And don't forget about those hormones. They affect our sleep too.
Right, growth hormone, leptin, cortisol.
If your cortisol is too high from stress, it can mess with your sleep.
So managing stress is important for sleep too.
And that leads us back to acute versus chronic stress.
Right. Exercise is good stress, but chronic stress is bad stress. How do we tell the difference?
Well, acute stress is short-lived and it helps us adapt. Chronic stress is constant and it wears us down.
Like a sprint versus a marathon.
Exactly. And chronic stress can do real damage to the brain. Inflammation, hormone imbalances, even damage to brain cells.
So managing stress isn't just about feeling better, it's about protecting our brains.
Now, bringing it all together, Lugavere has this genius foods plan, his roadmap for brain health.
Okay, let's hear it. What are the key points?
Well, it starts with cutting out the usual suspects, processed foods, refined grains, sugar, inflammatory seed oils.
So basically ditch the junk and eat real food.
Right. And then there's the strategic carbohydrate reintegration.
Wait, I thought we were supposed to avoid carbs.
After an initial low-carb period, Lugavere says reintroducing carbs a few times a week can be beneficial.
Okay, I need to hear more about this carbohydrate reintegration.
It's about optimizing your hormones and replenishing energy. Carbs and insulin aren't always bad. It's just that we tend to overdo it.
So it's all about balance.
Exactly.
Yeah.
This helps improve our metabolic flexibility, how our bodies switch between using carbs and fat for fuel.
So we're teaching our bodies to be more efficient.
That's the goal.
Yeah.
And it's a key part of the Genius Foods plan, working with our bodies, not against them.
I like that. So finding a way to nourish our brains that feels good and sustainable.
And Lugavere gives you meal plans and recipes to help you do that.
Nice. So he's giving us the tools to build those brain-boosting meals.
Yeah.
One thing I found interesting was his take on consistency versus moderation.
Yeah, he says everything in moderation can actually lead to a less healthy diet.
Really? Why is that?
Well, because when people try to eat everything in moderation, they often end up eating less of the good stuff and more of the bad stuff.
So it's about focusing on the foods that really nourish us.
And this whole idea of strategically reintroducing carbs, it helps improve our metabolic flexibility, which is really important for brain health.
So we're becoming metabolic ninjas.
Exactly. And that's what I love about the Genius Foods plan. It's about understanding our bodies and making choices that support them.
It feels empowering. It's like we're taking back control of our health.
And Lugavere encourages us to question things, be skeptical, and keep learning. Because science is always changing, especially in the field of brain health.
So always stay curious about how our brains work.
The more we learn, the better choices we can make for ourselves.
We've covered a lot in this deep dive. The power of Genius Foods. Sleep, gut health, stress management. It's a lot to take in.
It is, but remember, it's about progress, not perfection.
Right? Small steps every day.
And one of the most important things is to remember that we have more power over our brain health than we think.
So it's not just about preventing cognitive decline. It's about actively improving our brain function.
Exactly.
Boosting creativity, focus energy. Feeling more alive.
So it's about creating the conditions for our brains to thrive.
And that's what I find so inspiring about Genius Foods and Lugavere's work. He's inviting us to explore the amazing potential of our brains.
It's like we're all brain explorers on this exciting adventure.
And remember, it's never too early or too late to start taking care of your brain.
Absolutely. So as we wrap up this deep dive, what's one thing you want listeners to remember? Yeah, I'm feeling pretty pumped up about all this. It's like Lugavere is giving us this roadmap to a better brain, and it's up to us to follow it.
I know, right? It's not about changing everything at once. It's about those little steps, those consistent changes that add up over time.
Right. It's like that saying, a journey of 1,000 miles starts with one step. And in this case, that one step could be swapping out that sugary drink for some water or adding more veggies to your plate. Exactly. And that's what I really like about Lugavere's approach. It's not about being restrictive. It's about understanding how food affects our brains and making choices that feel good for us.
Yeah, it's about taking charge of our brain health. And one thing that really hit home for me was that it's never too early or too late to start taking care of our brains.
Yeah, he really drives that point home. It's easy to think, oh, I'm young, I don't need to worry about that yet, or I'm older now, it's too late. But Lugavere says our brains are super adaptable, even as we age.
So we can always make positive changes no matter where we're at.
Exactly. And there's so much research showing that lifestyle changes like diet and exercise can really improve brain function even in people who are already experiencing some decline.
That's pretty amazing. It's like we have the power to change our brain's future.
And it's not just about preventing the bad stuff. It's about making our brains even better, boosting creativity, focus, energy, feeling more alive.
So it's about creating the best possible environment for our brains to thrive.
And that's what I find so inspiring about Genius Foods. It's not just about the science. It's about this invitation to explore the amazing potential of our brains.
It's like we're all on this brain health adventure together.
Absolutely. And so as we wrap up this deep dive, is there like a final thought you want to leave listeners with, something to kind of ponder as they go on their own brain health journey?
That's a good question. I think it goes back to that idea of consistency and taking small steps. We've covered so much ground today. Those Genius Foods, sleep, gut health, stress management. It can feel a little overwhelming.
Yeah, it's easy to get caught up in that all-or-nothing thinking and then give up before you even start.
Exactly. So the key is to find those small, sustainable changes you can make every day, like starting your day with a brain-boosting smoothie or swapping coffee for green tea in the afternoon. Or maybe it's just taking a few minutes to meditate or going for a walk in nature after dinner.
I love that. It's about finding what works for you and making it a part of your daily routine.
It's like we're planting seeds for a healthier brain, and with consistent care, those seeds will grow into something amazing.
That's a beautiful way to put it. It's those consistent daily choices that make all the difference.
Well said. Well, I think that about wraps up our deep dive into genius foods with Max Lugavere. I hope you've enjoyed exploring the world of brain health with us and feel inspired to start your own journey.
Remember, you have the power to shape your brain health. Stay curious and never stop learning.
Until next time, keep those brains sharp and those spirits high.